Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's Friday. You know what that means.
Front Office Friday! Better late than never edition.
Let's go. Better late than never. That's right. We had some conflicts earlier today. Didn't quite work out, but that's okay. We're going to finish off the workday. This way, if you're at work right now, you're just watching that clock. We're going to get you across the finish line and then get you into the weekend. So welcome in, everybody joining us here on a Friday to talk NBA basketball. Keith, I'm so glad we were able to work this out and get this in. Not quite as early as usual. I know somebody already said in the comments like the times are all over the place and stuff. Sometimes we need a little bit of flexibility, but we're always going to have a show. And Keith did mention it on his Twitter account. So that's a good place to check for when our shows are going to be going live.
Yeah, sometimes I mention it like 30 minutes before we're going to start, but hey, keep you on your toes. Be ready. That's why you put notifications on, so you'll know.
Exactly.
Tom says he's still in bed, just waking up this Saturday morning. Look at this guy.
See, we've got the international following in the house. Keith, so this show, we actually get to kick it off with something. This is obviously a little more Lakers related than anything else, but still, this is big news for me.
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
Horrifying indeed. David McMenamin reporting that Jared Vanderbilt has still not been cleared for any contact drills and continues to work his way towards full sprinting and jumping in his reconditioning program. He went through an individual workout at the UCLA Health Training Center today while the Lakers held a team practice. So this is, I know, Keith, when I mentioned it to you before we went on the show, you went, that's not that big.
Well, no, I was more
huge in the Lakers world. It's huge. We have been, waiting for the return of Jared Vanderbilt for what feels like forever. And the Lakers, especially defensively, have really, really needed him. Based on the workouts that we've seen from him, the footage of him kind of shooting around before games and stuff, I'm not surprised that this is the news right now. I think he'll probably wind up getting reevaluated next week. Darvin Ham did indeed mention, I believe it was 2 nights ago, that Jared Vanderbilt will get reevaluated this coming week, and then there'll be a little bit more information on kind of where he's at. But based on the workouts we've seen him doing, it's all pretty flat-footed stuff, not him running a lot, not him jumping, nothing explosive. That tells you he's probably still a little bit of ways from coming back. And obviously the clock is ticking. The season's going to end, not this weekend, but next weekend. So we'll see if he can actually get back out on the floor or not. But he's at least going through individual drills and things like that. But I'm starting to be skeptical that if Jared Vanderbilt does come back during the regular season, that he's going to be able to make an impact until maybe deeper on in the playoffs if the Lakers last that long, because it's going to take a while to ramp up from a midfoot sprain.
Yeah, there's 2 thoughts that I had. First is from this tweet is the idea that he's still ramping up towards full sprinting and jumping. That tells me this is not a, hey, we'll let you know on next Friday and he'll be ready. Like that doesn't sound like he's really all that close. And then the second thing is kind of what you touched on is we've got a week left in the season. It's probably getting down to the point where if you're the Lakers, I'm going to steal a little bit of a Josh Hart-ism here from the Knicks guys. If we see him, great. We're pleasantly surprised, but you gotta, if you're Darvin Ham and staff and the players, you start preparing like he's not playing again this season. Just if you get him, that's a bonus and you move forward. If not, you just kind of go from there. So it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah, and Rui Hachimura has been playing great, of course, on the wing for the Lakers. I talked about that on yesterday's Lakers Nation podcast. He's been fantastic, but they could certainly use Jared Vanderbilt's defensive abilities, his rebounding, definitely something the Lakers could use. So we'll keep an eye on this, but I know this is not the news that Lakers fans were wanting to hear. We were wanting to hear, okay, he's cleared for contact, and that would tell you that he's really progressing towards a return. This is, he's not really fully sprinting yet, not fully jumping. He's just going through individual workouts. And remember, he's a guy specifically, Jared Vanderbilt is, where he relies a lot on his athleticism. That's part of what makes him so great. It's his ability to cut quickly, his quick feet for a guy his size. His athleticism is a big part of his game. So if he's not at 100% physically, or he's not anywhere close to that, if he's not sprinting at this point, he's not jumping, it's still going to be a bit. And even when he does come back, it's going to take him a little bit to get back to being himself, because he does have to recover that athleticism, that athletic ability that he'll certainly have lost from being sidelined with a foot injury. We saw the same thing when he was dealing with the heel injury earlier in the season. He came back in December. He didn't really come back until somewhere into January. That was when he was back, and he was truly himself. In fact, we saw, I believe, 5 games of Jared Vanderbilt actually looking like Jared Vanderbilt, and then he got hurt again. So hopefully he's able to recover here, but Keith, it's looking more and more likely that the Lakers are going to be heading into the postseason with, at best, a very limited version of Jared Vanderbilt, but perhaps more likely just without Jared Vanderbilt at all.
Yeah, to your early point, this is not like a standstill shooter, a guy who's very ground bound. Those guys, you could probably say, all right, if he comes back and he's not exactly himself, we can just kind of move forward with it. But if it is a spot where it is, all right, we're gonna roll him out there right now limited, he's just not going to be the same player, and they're not going to do that either. They're going to make sure he's healthy, because it's important to remember the Lakers have him signed for several years going forward. You don't need to rush anything back that turns this relatively minor injury, and I know it's been a long absence, but this is not something that ended his season. I mean, it maybe turns out it does, but this is not a major injury, not a major surgery or anything like that. This is something where we don't need to turn this into something that we're talking in training camp. Hey, Jared Vanderbilt's not really ready because he's still dealing with the foot thing, because he came back and played and things like that. So I think you just got to be very cautious with stuff like this. Yeah, there it is. You just pulled it up. His extension starts next year at $10 million. So you want to make sure Jared Vanderbilt's ready to go, ready to be a big part of things moving forward for you, because you don't want to be in a spot where you're dealing with him later. So I think the Lakers are being smart with this. I also think, too, this is not a thing where even if he does get cleared, you can expect, hey, get him out there and he's going to run, 30 minutes a night or anything like that. I think it's probably going to be, I think they would rather, hey, get him out there and let him run for 15 minutes a night, really high energy, give you everything he's got, really empty the tank, each game, and then we'll kind of go from there. And maybe that's where we get to. The nice thing is, he's not necessarily this sounds bad putting it this way, but it's not how I mean it. He's not like the most skillful guy in the world, meaning it's not somebody who you're worried about, man, he's going to need 5-6 games to get into a good rhythm as a shooter and all that kind of stuff. You just want him to be out there kind of causing chaos, which is what he does best, rebound and defend and run the floor. So maybe he can get back out there, but we'll see. My guess is maybe first round if they get there, like that's probably where we're looking, because if it's going to be another week before he's reevaluated, that makes it tough that we're even going to see him in the play-in tournament if that's where the Lakers land.
Yeah, I think we're hoping to get some reevaluation news. Maybe Monday. The Lakers play back-to-back this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, so maybe we'll get some reevaluation news this weekend. But as you can see, Jared Vanderbilt's contract, 4-year deal after this one. He's got that extension. I think it's a pretty team-friendly contract based on what he provides on the floor. But the key is it's when he's on the floor. They need to get him back and healthy. So certainly something we'll be keeping an eye on, but wanted to kick things off with that. All right, let's get into some of our questions, some of our comments here. Keith, I know we want to talk about expansion a little bit. We've got a lot of different topics to dive into. So let's go here. Billy said the West is insane. Had the Lakers beat the Kings in those 2 crucial games, they would be the 6th seed. Instead, they're the 9th seed. Yeah, I mean, it's the margin for error is non-existent. You want to point to, for any team, you can point to any number of games. And this is, Keith, this is kind of par for the course this time of year. Every team right now is looking back on their schedule. If they're thinking, man, I wish we were 1 spot up or 2 spots up, they're looking back and going, why did we lose that game to the Spurs in December or whatever? They're all looking back on the schedule and saying, if we had just done this, then this would have happened. I think that you, my friend, are correct, though, in the way you look at things. I think there's 5-ish games every season where you just have a bad shooting night, you have an off night, and you drop that game. You also have 5-ish games every season where you shoot the hell out of the ball, everything is going right, and you win those games. And so when I look back and I see regardless of the team, and you see losses that maybe shouldn't have happened, you can kind of chalk those up to, well, you're going to have those kind of outlier bad nights. And that's not necessarily a failing of your team. That's just what happens in the NBA because it's basketball and it's not completely predictable.
Yeah, I mean, pertinent to me, hand up, they won a game in Boston that they had no reason of winning, right? And so
no LeBron, no AD. They were a 16 and a half point, I think, underdog, and they won. Like,
something like
you
that.
never know.
Yeah. Yeah. So those did that. You're exactly right. Sometimes everything goes right and you win. Sometimes everything goes wrong and you lose. I always think of when we're talking about things like this, where it is like, had we done this, we would have, done that. I always think of that quote from the Mighty Ducks, a quarter of an inch and the shot would have gone in. And then Charlie says, yeah, but a quarter of an inch the other way and you would have missed the post entirely. Mm-hmm. So it's just things happen. You can't go back and worry about the stuff. You can only worry about now and moving forward and take care of business as best you can. I'll go on the rest of the way. The pup's checking in. He's fired up. No, what it is. He's like, this is at dinner time. Well, what are we doing here? Why are you still?
He's like, come on
this nonsense.
Front office Friday. What's happening?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, that's at lunch when I'm napping. So yeah, man, but the bigger point is, the West is bananas. We have no clarity on anything in the Western Conference, except I do feel after their win yesterday, I feel a lot better about the Clippers finishing fourth. I think once you get 2 games up with I think they only have 6 games left. So, I mean, it's sort of doable, but I think they're probably okay now. It's everything else is, who knows? We're going to see. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the West. Here's the standings right now. I mean, it's crazy. And I'll find the tweet that I had. Actually, I think I may have it in a slideshow here that I can dig up. But what's crazy is when you look at the West. So not only do you have the competition at the top, you've got Minnesota, you've got Denver, you've got OKC. That in and of itself, Keith, is going to be thrilling. Those 3 teams. And I'm especially interested to see how they balance health versus seeding. Because for a lot of these teams, they're obviously they've all clinched the playoffs. They're not worried about falling out or anything like that. But how much does it matter to them getting 1 or 2 or whatever versus we need to rest some guys and get ready for the postseason? That's what I'm interested to see, that dynamic in 1, 2, 3. The Clippers, I think, are pretty settled into 4. But then 5 through 10, and I think the Rockets are out, but 5 through 10, you could see a lot of shifting still going on. And here's what's really interesting is a lot of these teams, Keith, over the next week that we have here in the NBA, they play each other.
Yeah.
So that's going to create for even more potential movement between these squads. And this is where I think I broke it down. Yep, here it is. So here you've got like the Lakers play the Warriors and the Pelicans. The Pelicans play the Suns, the Kings, the Warriors, and the Lakers. The Suns play the Pelicans, the Clippers twice, Sacramento. The Kings play they play OKC, they play the Pelicans, the Suns. I mean, they're all playing each other. So what all of this means is we're going to see a ton of movement up and down here, potentially in the standings. And I think that's going to create a really exciting finish to the Western Conference. And Keith, my hope is that next Sunday, the final day of the season, we get some fireworks. Like I hope we've got a lot on the line still for that final, when all the games tip off at the same time. I hope there's a lot still up in the air on that day.
Completely agree. I will be surprised if we don't have somewhere between 4 and 5 seeds fully up for grabs come Sunday. And that may even be low. It may be more like 7 seeds are still up for grabs. I've seen some people saying, and I've been asked this on radio appearances this week, Denver, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, like, should they be thinking about who they want to play in the first round? And my thing is, yeah, sure, but tell me who's going to be there. Like, we have no idea. Like you don't want to play Dallas or Phoenix if you can avoid it. But how are you going to avoid it? You don't know, right? I no disrespect meant to the Pelicans or Kings, but I think those are the teams everybody would kind of probably like to play at this point. And those aren't even easy matchups either by any means. So I think but I don't know who's going to be there at this point. So I think you got to really just play it out. and let it fall where it may, and you just kind of go. Like you go. And I think for Minnesota and Oklahoma City, we've talked about it plenty. They need to try to get home court advantage over Denver, because you do not want to have to play a game 7 on the road in Denver if you can avoid it. You really want to try to be in the top seed if you can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely you do. All right, let's do this. Let's get to this question here because we've got a few still coming in. Roberto said, have you guys heard Bobby Marks' sports business classroom? Keith, I know you can speak to this quite a bit. I'm looking to attend this year and want to know if it's worth it.
Definitely worth it. I would say, Roberto, it depends. And if you want to get into a more detailed answer and a little bit of back and forth, my email is in my Twitter bio. Feel free to pull it and send me an email, and I will email you back with questions. But just briefly, if you're looking to work in the NBA or even just in the world of sports in general, in a bunch of different areas, but front office or in the media side, or even league operation side, things like that, definitely worth it to get there, especially if your goal is to work in the NBA, because they're directly connected to the NBA and to NBA Summer League at Sports Business Classroom. So it takes place during NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. It's full disclosure, it's fairly pricey, but it is well worth it if you can afford it, to make the connections you're going to make, and obviously the things you're going to learn over the course of the time there, where you're going to make great connections with classmates and your teammates and the exercises, because you get put into groups and things like that. And you're going to make incredible connections, have a chance to network with folks throughout the league that you just wouldn't get this access to otherwise for 99.999% of people, except through the Sports Business Classroom. So I would totally check it out. But yeah, Roberto, or anybody watching, listening, if you have more questions, you can shoot me an email. I'll answer as best I can. I know a bunch of people have gone through Sports Business Classroom and have jobs now in the NBA. Several people I know of have made that happen, and they do a great job getting people ready and teaching people, and again putting them in place to kind of better themselves through the world of sports and basketball and things like that. So totally worth it if you can pull it off.
Yeah, if you guys are familiar with Lakers Nation, Ron Gutterman went through Sports Business Classroom, and he raves about it and loved it. So yeah, definitely something worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, and you might even see Ron there. I don't want to speak for him, but they tend to have alumni come back and help with stuff and hang out and pop in the room. So I know he did that last year for a few different days while he was out in Las Vegas with us. So yeah, you can definitely go that way.
Keith J is asking, are you rooting for the Celtics tonight? So here's the way that I handle this. So the Celtics are playing the Kings, and of course the Celtics are resting guys. Thanks a lot. But in this game,
sorry for clinching everything that clinch with 2 weeks to go in the season.
It's been the Lakers' luck so far over the last few weeks. It's been everybody they need to lose is playing teams that have decided to rest guys. But anyway, so the way I approach stuff and I would expect, Keith, I'm sure you do the same thing. If when you need the Lakers to win a game, I look at it as I'm rooting for the Kings to lose. And that's the extent of it. I'm rooting for the Kings to lose. And that's the extent of my rooting interest in that one. And that's the lens that I view it through. And I would assume you'd be the same. You're never rooting for the Lakers to win. You're rooting for their opponent to lose in a specific matchup that could help your team.
Yeah, I root for a scandal that causes both teams to be eliminated in the league's like double forfeit. You both out. We move on.
Keith, if it's Celtics Clippers in the finals this year, I'm rooting for the Meteor. Like that's right? That's where we're at.
I don't know, man. We had an earthquake in New York, New Jersey area, and now an eclipse coming, and
earthquakes elsewhere in the world too, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there was definitely some big earthquakes. Thankfully, it sounds like the one in the Northeast. There was very minor damage, and nobody got hurt or killed.
Bad omen.
Is, super important. But yeah, I hear you on rooting for the Meteor in certain circumstances. I get it. I saw your tweet today, your daily tweet of here's what we want for the Lakers, and it was Kings lose, and everybody else was lose too. But there was no mention. It's okay. I get it. I see. It's funny because you say that with the Lakers they're getting disadvantaged, right? Because guys are wrestling against the Kings. I can't tell you when I tweeted out that Jaylen Brown and Derek White were out tonight, how many Kings fans are like, well, we're not winning now because we can't beat these undermanned teams. We only play well when their teams are healthy and ready.
It's
everybody
funny
feels
because
that way.
so here's what I put out. Here's what at Lakers Nation is rooting for tonight. Kings lose, Pelicans lose to Spurs. Usually, just if I'm feeling extra petty, I'll throw the Clippers in there too, and I'll say Clippers lose to whoever. Just it doesn't matter who they're playing, just they lose. But it's funny. Like I did a while ago. There's this sentiment from Lakers fans that everybody that's hurt comes back to play against the Lakers, right? They always return for that Lakers game. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's every team feels that way, and I think it's because there's so many games in the NBA and so many little injuries and things. It's rare for a team to actually be 100% healthy at just about any point of the season. You do get some outliers where teams like I think OKC has been pretty healthy this season. But
Boston's been remarkably healthy this season for the most part.
But that's typically the outlier, right? I mean, most teams suffer some injuries. So there's a pretty constant flow of players going in and out of lineups. And I think that just creates this perception that, oh, this guy's coming back. And the next game, it's this guy's coming back. And then the game, of course, everybody comes back to play our team. But it's fun.
I think, it's funny too. This was a point Tim Bontemps made on the Hoop Collective. I think it was last night's show or maybe today's, I don't know, whenever it posted, but it was their most recent episode where he said, the reality is to win an NBA title, you have to be good and you have to be lucky. And what he meant by lucky is you have to have good health yourself and maybe get bump against the team that is missing a guy or two along your journey to the title. It's just true. I mean, nobody rolls in fully healthy into the playoffs and then just rolls all the way through everybody. It doesn't happen that way. It hasn't that's just not how it works. Sometimes you have to be kind of almost the healthiest team standing at the end in a little bit. And there's certainly that's going on with some teams. I mean, this Jaylen Brown thing doesn't sound super serious, but he's got a left hand thing that's going on. Insert joke here about he doesn't have a left hand, so what difference does it make? Which is he's been a lot better this year with it. That's get a new joke, right? Fine, Brian Colangelo, find a new slant, no more caller. But it is there's just this like feeling of just get to the finish line of the regular season and then we can kind of reset. And as we kind of talked about with like Jared Vanderbilt, it's just not really that way. That's just not how it works. Some stuff carries over into the playoffs. It's not like we, all right, all injuries reset now and everybody's healthy. And I wish that's how it could work. That'd be amazing. It just isn't. So you do need to be good and a little lucky to get there. So, hey, can you bring up your other tweet, the expansion tweet, the one I sent you?
Yes, I did. I did just want to note real quick. The chat was correcting us. The other earthquake is in Taiwan.
In Taiwan, 7.4. And that was like bad. Like,
yes,
looked really awful. So yeah,
right. So hopefully everybody is okay there on that one, and people stay. That's scary when you get. I mean, growing up in California, like earthquakes it's a big deal. It's no joke.
I have lived in like all the corners of the country except for the Northeast. Or Northwest, rather. In the Northeast, you get blizzards, and I've been in my share of those. I've been in multiple hurricanes here in Florida, and when we lived in Southern California, we had a couple, thankfully, very small, minor earthquakes. I've told people all the time, give me a blizzard or a hurricane every day of the week. Yes, they're massive, they're long events, but they're coming, and you have plenty of time to get out, get prepared, do what you need to do. An earthquake just happens. And even the small ones we were in when we lived there, those were terrifying. I'd take, if I gotta pick a natural disaster, which was a stupid thing to have to do, give me a hurricane or a blizzard or anything like that any day of the week, or an earthquake. I don't want any part of earthquakes. And it's funny because everybody I know who lived in Southern California is like, no way, give me an earthquake over a hurricane every day of the week. And I'm like, hurricanes are really they're coming, and you have days, if not a week, to get ready and do what you need to do. It's just what you're used to, though. Yeah, that's the reality.
It's what you're used to. Sometimes stuff tornadoes can come up quick in certain areas of the Midwest and things like that. But but you also get kind of weird weather. You kind of get a sense everywhere for when that stuff's gonna come up. There's something just about everywhere. I lived in Arizona for a while, and that was it's hot. That's about
Yeah.
you get the sandstorms, you get
Sure.
they're called haboobs, and we would get those. But other than that, it's not, you didn't get too much there. But yeah, everywhere's got something. Everywhere's got
Yep,
something.
everywhere. All right.
Anyway, this
So I
this
wanted-
tweet that I put out last night, I said when
Yeah.
expansion hits the NBA, the biggest winner will be the West team that gets to move into the East. And I threw that out there, and you see, I mean, 2.1 million views. This was just kind of like a quick, like random passing thought that I threw out there, and I was amazed by how many people, number one, wanted to talk about whether or not the NBA should expand, and number two, if they expand, where, and number three, who should move? Who should be? This is the biggest one.
And how many
Who
teams should
and
move?
how many teams should move
Yep.
if and when teams wind up joining the league, if there's expansion. So, Keith, I know there's a reason why you specifically asked me to pull this up. So give me your thoughts.
All right. Well, first thought, which we did talk about a little bit, a lot of people can't do simple math. If they add Seattle and Las Vegas, you only need to move one team. You're adding two, so you only need to move one to rebalance the conferences. Everybody keeps saying you got to move two, you got to move two. No, that's not how it works. Then you would have again one more in the East than you would have in the West if you move two. So with that, you would be in a spot where you're. Let's go to the next part of it. Should they expand? Doesn't matter really what you think. They are going to expand. I will say, as I have said for Trevor, it's going to be 2-3 years now. I've said this. It's going to be Seattle and Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, it's now just kind of an open secret in the league that one of those two cities or both would have to completely blow it to not get the expansion teams. Like, that's just going to be how it's going to be. To the question of, a couple people are saying, can we see all the teams on a map? We're not going to.
I got them.
Oh, do you have it? All right,
yep,
perfect.
I got them.
I will. So there it is. Memphis is the easternmost team, but they don't necessarily make the most sense to be moved. It's Minnesota for me.
I agree, 100%.
Because they're not close to anybody except teams in the East. So I would move Minnesota. Now, I will say, friends of mine in Memphis who are in I believe the Central Time Zone have said how much they hate games starting at, I think it's for them, it's like 9:30 is the latest start time.
Yeah, the West Coast games will start at 9:30 Central Time.
And then they're like, and then our East Coast games start at 6. They're like, we just like to be on one or the other, not this kind of sitting in the middle, not knowing. New Orleans, I get it. They're fairly Eastern as well. I think the league's going to really take an opportunity here. I don't think they're going to get rid of conferences just because it's a little too hard, but I think they will kind of blow up the divisions and really rework them and do a bunch of stuff with that. But if you just look at where Minnesota sits, they're not close to anybody except for Milwaukee and Chicago. So Memphis and New Orleans, they're fine with the teams that they're already in the division with. Like that's perfectly fine. They're not that far away, even if you do have the time zone thing. So that's where I think we're going to see that. But here's the bigger reason.
I like this. Ironically, move Portland to the Eastern Conference.
Right? Yeah. Just wrap them around. It'd be kind of funny. In Portland, I get it. Portland has nobody close to them, but in this scenario, we're thinking they'll have Seattle, which will be, that'll be one of the closer trips in the league as it was. And that was a great rivalry for years in the NBA. So the bigger reason I wanted to bring it up, though, was your comment of the biggest winners, whoever moves east. All right, I get it. The West is far better than the East right now. We're probably in about a 2-decade cycle of that being the case, right? I think, though, expansion's not coming probably for 3 seasons before we see a team. Where are we going to be at that point, right? So that's where, and I know it was a little tongue-in-cheek. You were saying that. But, like, the Warriors aren't going to be the Warriors. Who knows what the Clippers will be? Who knows what the Lakers will be? Who knows what the Suns will be? Like, you've got some teams. Now, I would raise my hand to be like, get me out of the West so I don't have to deal with Wembanyama for the next, half decade or whatever.
That's what I was really I'm looking at. Okay. Some of the young guys that are coming up, right? I mean, Jokic is not old, but I mean, SGA, he's in the West.
You've got the Thunder,
Wemby,
like they're going to be there. Memphis, New Orleans with Zion. So those would be more, I'd be like, hey, give Anthony Edwards in Minnesota, which, conversely, and I'm all for it. Add another star power team over to the East. Let's go. But it's going to be, if they have to move a team, it's going to be Memphis, Minnesota, or New Orleans. It'll be one of the 3.
Yeah.
All three have a superstar player, and let's go. Drop them in there and let's move. So I'm very curious to see how they break all this down, where they go with everything, because I think this is a real chance when they expand to let's kind of blow it up a little bit. Let's figure it out. Let's kind
Yeah.
of go from there. So that's the
Redo the drawing board.
we'll see. But yeah, it's guys, I get it. The West is way better than the East right now. I get it. A bunch of people in the
Yeah.
chat are like, "You dummy," and I'm like, "Yeah, I understand." But the expansion's not starting tomorrow. Like we're starting in several years.
I think even if the advantage still exists for being in the Eastern Conference 3 years from now, even understanding that this thing can be cyclical, it has been a while that the West has been the stronger conference than the East, especially right now. Like last year, I was saying, the West next year is going to be brutal. Right now, I'm looking at the West next year and saying, oh my gosh, it's going to be even worse because Wemby's here and all this stuff's happening, right? But if there's an advantage, even if it's you can only project out 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, the Wolves, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, they're going to be fighting each other tooth and wing, I guess, to get into the East, to be the team that gets to move East. But I agree with you that it needs to be the Wolves. And there's really two reasons for this, for the Wolves to be the team. And number one, they don't have any Western Conference teams around them, right? They don't have any West teams around them. They have Eastern Conference teams around them. And Memphis, yes, they're further east. If you were to draw the line down the country, they're further east. New Orleans, they're further east. But the Wolves don't have any West teams around them. But number two, in terms of why it should be the Wolves, it's because it actually benefits the West, and not in terms of the players that are on the Wolves, in terms of how far you have to travel. It's not just the Wolves having to travel. It's if you're the Lakers, you're the Clippers, you're the Warriors, you take out 2 games that you have to go to Minnesota. That's a lot of travel that you're taking out of your schedule, and you're replacing that with a quick trip to Vegas, a quick trip up to Seattle. That, I think, is a benefit, too, to the rest of the West. Now, that's not to say it's necessarily a short trip out to Memphis. There's, that can be a bit of a haul and everything. But still, for the Western Conference in general, you're going to be traveling a bit less if you remove the Wolves from the conference versus everybody else.
No, it's a great point, because what you end up having happen in that spot is the Minnesota trip gets kind of like attached to like the end of a East Coast trip a lot of times for a team, and you schedule wise for the especially the true West Coast teams. So Lakers, Clippers, Warriors, Kings, Trailblazers. Well, I know the Suns aren't on the coast, but we'll include them in there. They don't. That's almost how they always do it. So it's usually like your 2 games in Minnesota or your 1 game. Throw it on the end of a East Coast swing, because we're almost treating them like an East team already with that. So yeah, it's just kind of fun to say that. But I wanted to pull. Let me find it. This is a good comment from Squid here.
Good question.
I think the agreement has been, if when they restart, it's kind of like what happened with the Hornets, where the Hornets just have a gap. They have all the original Hornets like records and all the stuff that's there. Right. And for Seattle, it's extremely important because they do have an NBA title.
They had to leave their history.
Yeah, so they would. I do think they get back their history. I will say I heard somebody suggest this was probably about a month ago when expansion. It was maybe a month and a half. It was around the All-Star break when Adam Silver had talked about it. It was like, yeah, like we're looking at it. There were a lot of people who were saying, not a lot. There were a handful of people who were like, we just kind of want a fresh start. Like, we don't really want to necessarily be shoehorned into having to be the Sonics again. And that got shouted down so quickly, where people like, no, we're the Sonics. Like, so I think if they try to come in and be something else, people are really going to kind of lose their mind about it. So yeah, just thought that one was a little interesting.
They would be crazy to be anything other than the Sonics. I mean, not even just from a perspective of this is what fans want, but from a financial perspective, you've already got value in that name. There's nostalgia behind it. I mean, can you imagine how many Sonics jerseys and shirts and caps and all that are going to get sold as soon as it's announced that they're back? You make that anything else and you're losing out on, I mean, we're probably talking millions.
Yeah, when they announced the Sonics back, I'm 100% gonna buy. I wear it regularly on the show. I have a Sonics long sleeve T-shirt that I like. Um, I am gonna buy a Sonics T-shirt, and I'll probably buy a pair of Sonics shorts just because
Yeah.
the Sonics became this team that I really found myself rooting for. I said this the other night. Somebody tweeted some Sean Kemp highlights out. I think it was like this an account called the Seattle Sonics. It's not really the team account because Twitter
Yeah.
didn't exist back then. But this guy tweeted out the things, and I was like, man, I don't know if it's because they wore green and white or if just I was rooting for a West Coast team to maybe beat the Lakers, but I fell in love with the Sonics, and I loved how like brash that team was. Like they went to that finals against the Bulls. I could not have been rooting for them harder to beat the Bulls that year because I was like, let's go. I just liked Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, and they were talking trash, and that team was a lot of fun, man. So I'm excited to see them get back. Like I gotta believe we're gonna get this TV contract done, and I think
Yeah.
within a year, at most of that, they're gonna announce expansion. Probably then within 6 months to a year after that, it'll be here's the two teams, and it's probably history tells us about a year after that we'll see them play. So we're probably somewhere in the 3 to 4 year range on expansion coming, but it's definitely coming. And then the question becomes, is that it? Is it Seattle and Las Vegas? Or do they go a little further? Because who knows what the landscape will look like at that point.
Yeah, I do think Seattle and Las Vegas are no question, right? Like those are going to be the two teams, like you said, unless they do something crazy to lose that. It's going to happen. But is it going to be Seattle and Vegas? And then, hey, guess what? 3 years down the road, we're going to bring in two more. We're going to bring in maybe we bring in Mexico City. Maybe we go back to Vancouver. Maybe, there's going to be some other options.
Montreal wants a team very badly.
Sure. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at. And it's going to be, like I said, Vegas, Seattle, that's happening. That's happening.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Somebody keeps asking, they thought I was on vacation. I wasn't on vacation.
Yeah.
I missed a Lakers Nation live show because I had my daughter was in the school play.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to miss that. So she's worked way too hard on it. She was so excited for us to get to see her perform and everything. So I missed the Lakers Wizards game.
So you had
because of that.
And one night vacation.
Exactly. It was one night vacation. Night vacation.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what else we've
Let's
got.
Do this one.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's FIBA rules. They're just clearly allowing far more contact. Like it's been very obvious that's where they're going. I will say people have talked about the real kind of true stars they're still getting fouls. They're still getting there. It's like a lot of the other guys. It's the guys who are like going out there really just foul hunting. A lot of that's gone away. And what they're also allowing is, or not, I don't even want to say allowing, they're just not calling like things that are 30, 40, 50 feet from the basket, unless it's really egregious or it's a take foul or something like that. And they should. So I think it's been great. Like I think it's been really good. I said this at the time when we talked about it, that the best players overcome this, whatever it is, and they'll be fine. It's everybody else who needs to kind of figure it out. But yeah, that's what I think. I don't think they've moved two new rules. I think it's just a different interpretation or different allowance of contact, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm in complete agreement. I like it. I like them allowing a little bit more contact, allowing the players to play and all of that. I think that's actually important for the game. I don't think it's going to FIBA rules.
Sure.
I don't think that's what we're seeing. But
although we should go to the FIBA goaltending rules.
Yes, please. Yes.
It would just make everything easier on everybody, including the players, the officials, replay, like all that stuff. It's just much better. And people have this thought of, well, how does anybody ever score if you can just goaltend? That's not what it is. You can just take the ball off the rim, and it's just easier. You don't have offense. You actually get more putbacks because there's no offensive goaltending. You can just go up, and if it's on the rim, you can dunk it back in. So yeah, I think it's good.
Mitchell Robinson would be so excited,
right? Yeah, he'd benefit for sure. With that. You want to do this one?
Yeah, let's do that. What do you think of having a super cup like soccer where the NBA champs play the Euro champions in a 1-game in the off season in Europe. So the off season part is the tough part for me. Like
Yep.
if it's hey, we're going to organize this in July or something, like a lot of NBA guys aren't going to be, they're not in shape. They're not geared up and ready to go. Now, maybe you could do it as an exhibition at the beginning of the season, but like I know we get stuff in MLS, right? Where you'll have the MLS teams will play the teams from Mexico, and it's always at the beginning of the MLS season, whereas the Liga MX season is in full swing. So you're playing against teams that are already, fully into their season, and they're in rhythm and they're in shape and all of that. And the MLS teams are definitely at a disadvantage. In addition to, you can argue which league is better, all that kind of stuff. I don't need to get into all that, but that would be the question would be, if you do it in the off season, are you getting teams that are not in shape, that are not in rhythm? If you're going to do it in the season, how do you make that happen so that you do get that higher quality basketball? I'm not against the idea at all. I think it could be really cool. The timing, I think, would be something that they'd have to really figure out and find the best time to kind of capitalize on it.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. My first thought is, what does the NBA team benefit from this? Like, why? Like, what's the point? It's, people can argue till they're blue in the face. The NBA is the best professional basketball league. It's not even close. There's a reason why all of the best players want to get to the NBA. Like, that we can argue on the international level that other countries have caught up. They clearly have. Like, when we don't send our very best national team, other countries have a chance to beat us, and they have, and have done that now in a couple World Cups in a row. In the Olympics, we send our best guys from the U.S. and they take care of business. They got beat a few years back. Well, now it's like almost 2 decades back, but then they started sending the real guys again, and they took care of business. So I think that's the that's a big part of it there. There's just nothing really to be gained with this. I'll also say too, the whole idea of have the champions play the Euro champions in a game that's later. One of the biggest problems I know US fans stumble into with like the Champions League in soccer is, you qualified for it with Team A over here that won a whole bunch of games.
Right.
Now Team B, maybe a whole bunch of different players, is playing in this tournament that you qualified for with all these different guys. And people are, it's not even the same team that got in. Like, and we've seen sometimes some of these teams are, 6, 7 players in their starting 11 have changed out and been different. And people stumble into that where it's like, this is just weird. Like, I was rooting for this team all year long, and now it's like a completely different team, but we're in this competition. And every once in a while you see teams where it's like, yeah, we had the season of like Leicester had a season of a lifetime several years ago, won the Premier League, and now they've been relegated. So it's like it all falls down. It's just a weird thing with that. So I think it's just it's different stuff. And I just go back to the NBA. They're probably not going to do it. The NBA wasn't always the champs, but they used to send teams every year. Remember, it was the McDonald's games when we were kids. They would send teams, and they would just roll over these teams. Now other leagues have been great, but yeah, I've seen people say things like, the top European team could probably be a playoff team in the NBA. They wouldn't be. It's the same thing when people say, I think UConn could beat the Pistons. Maybe 1 out of 100 games. They might be able to do that. You got to remember, the best player on UConn is maybe going to be a good NBA player. Probably will be. A handful of them will probably be good NBA players, but the worst player on the Pistons was probably a great college player. Like, that's where it all falls apart there. So I don't know why they would care.
I think part of it too that we have to remember is, like, when the NBA guys don't look quite, or you're surprised that the world players look good, right? Compared to, say, Team USA or whatever. Part of it is you're playing international rules.
Yeah.
Take some of those teams and have them come over and play NBA rules, and that's going to change. That's going to shift things towards the NBA players. So that's part of it too. But you're right. Ultimately, it's only downside, right?
Yeah.
If you're an NBA team and you're the NBA champions and you go beat EuroLeague champions, it's going to be, well, of course you did.
Yeah.
Of course
Okay,
you're
did
an NBA team. Of course you should beat them, right? If you don't, it's a big deal. So if it's nothing, if you do beat them, and if you don't, it's a huge deal, and you're getting asked a bunch of questions about it. It's a problem. It's part of the reason why you don't see like the top tier guys doing the dunk contest and stuff. And maybe Jaylen Brown will change that, but it's why so many guys decline to do that stuff. It's also why you don't have a one-on-one competition, which will be tons of fun for us to watch. But none of the players want to be in that situation where they get to hear forever that, hey, you lost to this guy, right? Like that's not what they want. The downside is just too great.
Well, in the reality with the one-on-one stuff too, guys have talked about it over the years when it's been brought up, and they're like, so you get someone Shaq-like in it, and all he does is just back everybody down and dunk on them because no one can keep him from doing that. So where are we going with this? I want to pull this one up just because I thought it was interesting. Yeah, he did what he should do. He's getting evaluated. He's going to go get feedback from NBA teams.
Good point.
I don't think he stays in the draft. I think he ends up coming out. I seems like he's going to transfer, which is probably honestly the best thing for him. Get somewhere else. Be somewhere where you can grow and figure it out. But yeah, I don't even think he stays in the draft. I think he goes back to school and sees, can I boost myself up here, with having a good year. And quite frankly, the kid just needs a normal year. Let's have a normal summer where you can just play basketball, get better, work on your game, and go, because he clearly dealt with a whole lot of stuff before the season this year with the heart condition.
Keith, I think there's this idea that persists that despite that it's not been this way for a while, but that if you declare for the draft, that's it, you're in.
Yeah.
You're no longer, you can't go back. And that's not what it is. That's not what it is. This is, if he did anything but declare for the draft, it would be a surprise. There's no reason not to. There's no reason not to declare for the draft. Now, because it's Bronny James, right? Like, it's getting a lot of attention.
Sure.
A lot of guys who, and I'm not saying he's not going to get drafted, but a lot of guys who know they're not going to get drafted are declaring for the NBA draft. Now, they're going to go. They're going to do workouts. They're going to get feedback. They're going to talk to teams. They're going to find out, hey, what is it that I need to improve upon? And they're going to go back to school. And this is a normal thing that happens every single year. The only reason why this is such a big story is because it's Bronny James. Of course, he declared for the draft. He was always going to declare for the draft. This doesn't mean he's staying in the draft, though.
Correct.
And we'll have to wait and see what happens. Maybe he does stay in, but he is just declaring for the draft does not lock him in to actually being in the draft and leaving school. That is definitely not the case.
Yeah, 300 some odd players most years declare for the draft. That gets cut down to generally are in the range between, and this is between college players and international players, somewhere in the range of about 120 to 150. Usually gets cut by about half. So it is it's that's just where it is. It's it's there. So people are asking what schools. I mean, people have thrown a bunch of schools out there. People were throwing that out there before the kid even came out and said he was doing it. So people have said, why not Ohio State? Like with all this stuff and that. So there's other comments that are being made. They're unfair to the kid in there. So I'm going to address them because they're just ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
But just don't be stupid. Just because somebody's father is somebody doesn't mean they're going to be good too. Like, that's just dumb.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's not the way it goes. I grew up playing soccer. I loved soccer. My daughter is not coordinated at all on the soccer field, right? So you never know. Not to say I was ever a good soccer player or anything like that, but just because your dad is good at something doesn't make you automatically good at or like that thing or anything like that. So it just kind of depends.
Other way too. Like, I was
sure.
like, I played soccer too, and I'll say I was barely okay. And my daughter's a very good soccer player. So it's, that's just kind of how it goes with this.
You never know. You never know. I mean, my dad is super handy, can build anything. I am not at all. I gotta be
my dad's a master electrician, and I'm changing a light bulb is the extent of what I can do. And he's shown me stuff 100 times. And I think he's just I gotta be a disappointment in that respect to him. It's just tough. But yeah, I like this one. Whoops, not that one. This one. Can you give me an analysis of what's happening with the sale of the Blazers? No, because there really isn't much to be said. They've kept everything very, very quiet. I've heard people suggest they aren't going to sell the team. Like they've kind of changed course on. They may just now keep the team in the family. So I really don't know with this. As far as frustration, it's Portland was one of the more stable franchises for forever, right? Like every year they were a playoff team. I think they had, outside of that ridiculous Spurs run, they had one of the longer runs of consecutive playoff appearances than anybody. And I think it's a thing with them where now it's kind of you've hit some lean times here and they're rebuilding, and it's going to take a little bit of time, and they'll figure it out. But yeah, I think they'll figure it out. I'll tell you, I'm not out on Scoot. Like people seem to want to bury the kid already. I'll take any stock anybody's selling on Scoot Henderson. I'll happily gather it all up.
He has like a all-time low.
Hey, hasn't been good.
Yeah, like plus minus or something like that.
Oh well, yeah, that's because I mean,
but he's on. But people are getting in that. By the way, I right now actually ironically have the all-time low song "Dear Maria" count stuck in my head. So funny that's the phrase that just kind of came out. But his plus minus hasn't been good. But he's on a bad team. I think the question that I've got more for the Blazers, and I'm just looking at their salary sheet here, and let's throw this up here via Spot Track. What do you think about DeAndre Ayton? Is he a long-term guy? Like, I think Jeremy Grant someday, it may not be this summer. At some point, I think they're going to move on from Jeremy Grant. They'll move right. He's not going to be part of the long-term iteration of this team. What is Ayton? Is he a long-term fit for this team?
I think with Ayton, what you're doing is you play it out over the next couple years, and then when you're ready to win, if he's playing well, you just move forward at that point. By the time we're in the 25-26 season, if he's not, you either trade him then. There's probably no trade this summer everybody's going to want to do for him. Not that his contract is untradeable, but he's 25. Like I'm not, again, like it's this, there's this rush to like bury these kids. And sometimes, sure, some guys can't play and you can see it right away. Aiden's still averaging like 18 and 15 or something ridiculous like that this season. So like I like, in his percentages are strong for a guy who shoots a good amount of jump shots, like, which is kind of surprising. I don't know. He's at 16 and 11 are his per game. So I inflated him a little bit, but still pretty good. And on 58% shooting from the field. So I'm all right with Ayton. I don't know. I'm not there where I feel like it's, we got to bury this guy. I think Grant, Brogdon, probably Robert Williams, those guys are probably all going to be traded. I would imagine there's no real reason to keep Brogdon. Like you've got a bunch of other guards. You don't need him. I'm sure he doesn't really necessarily want to be there. Jeremy Grant, I would try to move on it now sooner rather than later if I'm going to trade him while he still could, pop on a team and have pretty good, value. But rest of the roster, it's fine. Cap sheet's not bad. It's not, not a real messy one. So yeah, I think Portland's okay. It's just, you just need time. And you know what, with Scoot, what's funny, Chauncey Billups, take it from somebody who hated it. Celtics gave up on Chauncey Billups midway through his rookie year. Rick Pitino was like, gotta go. I need a veteran point guard in here. And then Chauncey Billups took him a few years, but then he turned into became a pretty good player. So I think it's, I think it's, it's just going to take Scoot time to get there. And fortunately, they can give it to him. Like, I'm not that worried about it. I know that she has to sell the Blazers. Let me pull this comment up here.
Yeah.
I know it was in there, but there's no deadline. So what happens if she keeps it till her dying day? That's the same as not selling almost, right? So yeah, I think it's going to get probably kind of messy before it gets better, and then we'll see where it all goes. But yeah, it's not out there. Yeah, I get it. Ayton doesn't always play hard, and the dominating stuff is stupid. It's the dumbest nickname. And you can't give yourself a nickname. Stop with this.
No.
Like that's not allowed. So that's just dumb. But yeah, I still think he's an okay player. I don't. People act like he's the worst center in the league, and is he overpaid? Sure, but I don't think he's bad by any means.
No, I don't think he's bad either. He's a bit overpaid. So just I'm looking at the Blazers roster. If I'm running the Blazers, I'm moving Malcolm Brogdon and I'm trying to move Jeremy Grant this summer and then see what I can get and then go from there. I think they definitely need to move on from Brogdon. Jeremy Grant, his contract's long, but the value is just going to keep going down the older he gets. So I would try to move on from both those guys if I can, find a new home, and then off you go. This question here, do you guys have any resources to recommend for learning more about front office, CBA, salary, etc. topics in one's own time? Well, Keith, I mean, obviously Spot Track has a lot of stuff that is certainly useful when you're getting into teams and salary caps and putting in extensions and all that kind of information that's in there. That in and of itself is a fantastic resource.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, we spend a lot of time and effort goes into tracking that stuff down. Our stated goal is we want to be the most accurate, reliable, and quickest updated public resource for people with salary stuff. If you like baseball and football and hockey and soccer and other sports, if it's out there, we get it and we get it updated. The WNBA is now updated fully on there as well. Women's soccer, we've got all the rosters updated. It's very difficult to track down the salary information for that, but they're trying. They're building it out. There's even individual sports on Spot Track like golf and tennis and racing and all kinds of stuff that you can pull up as far as all-time earnings and wins and all that stuff. To learn the front office and CBA, so I can only tell you what I did, and it was I'll tell the story real quick here. This is probably our last question today. I wanted to learn all about it because I was getting very confused about how these teams could sign guys, but then re-sign other guys. Because I knew the term bird rights, but I didn't understand what it meant. And how are some teams have $100 million payroll, which back then was a lot, versus other teams have like a $60 million payroll. Like, how does this work? And so I said, I'm going to learn how this all works. There were no real resources available at the time when I wanted to learn it that I could just look up on the internet.
Right.
So I cold called the NBA and I said, can I get a copy of the collective bargaining agreement? And their answer was no. Like, you don't work in the league. No, that's not something we'll send you by. And pretty much like hung up on me. So I cold called the NBA Players Association and said, can I get a copy of the collective bargaining agreement? And they said, sure, send a check for $5 and a self-addressed stamped envelope, and we'll send you a bound copy. And this was a long time ago. And like 3 weeks later, I got a copy of the CBA in the mail. And then I started reading it and trying to teach myself how all of this stuff works. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not trained. So I stumbled, I made a ton of mistakes. There's things I didn't understand. Larry Kuhn started the FAQ, CBAFAQ.com. And still to this day, it is my go-to resource if there's something I don't understand. So what I'll do is I will go through when a new CBA comes out. So for example, when the new one came out, I went through, I pulled out all the updated sections and go through them. And when my non-lawyer brain gets confused and stumble, I'll go to the FAQ and go through it. Now, it hasn't been updated for this newest CBA. I assume that's coming at some point. Then ask a lot of questions. Like Eric Pincus, who I know Lakers fans know well because he covered the team for a number of years. He has been a massive help to me. I can't even tell you how many times I'd be like, hey, I'm not getting this. Can you walk through it? And then there's times when he's been like, that's an interesting one. And then we'd walk through it. Larry Kuhn answered a lot of questions for me as it was coming up. Now, it was a very different time then because there were like 10 of us who cared about some of this stuff. Like, hey, what's a qualifying offer for this third-year restricted free agent? Like, no one else really cared. But those of us who did really cared. And we wanted to get it right. And that's a big part of why I try to pay it forward for other people. When people ask me questions, we do it a lot here on the show, try to break things down and try to teach, because a lot of people help me that they don't need my help understanding things. I will say it's super cool though. We have a group of like cap nerds that when something weird happens, we all kind of pop in and then we run through stuff together. Hey, you can't do that. And he just unplugged my camera. So there it is. That's probably how the show's ending with the dog. So he jumped up and he took a piece of paper off my desk. He's mad because they're like, this is too late. We should be playing. So I apologize, my camera's out. But I'll finish with do what you can to try to learn, right? Try to learn your best and do that and then ask questions. We try to come here to be educational, answer stuff as best we can. So, and yes, this is 100% true, even though it's KEITH. Yes, I'm a nerd when it comes to this stuff and a lot of other things too. Proud of it.
I think this is definitely a first. This is the first time our show has ever been ended via active dog.
Yeah, right. Now he's under my desk and he's like legit mad. He's like, this is not time for work. Like I need to I think he probably wants to eat and play.
We better wrap things up then. Let me just say this from an education standpoint, coming from a teacher's background, one of the best ways to learn something, if you're really trying to learn, it's to teach it. And I can tell you that's true for my own life. Like I became much more knowledgeable in history once I started teaching history. Once you because you really have to know it in order to explain it to somebody else. So once you do start getting into the cap stuff, you're really starting to do these deep dives. You immerse yourself in it. You're reading, you're checking out Spot Track. You're listening to this show. Obviously, that's a good start, I hope. You're reading the CBA FAQ, all that kind of stuff. Explain it to someone else, right? Tell somebody else about it. That's the process that typically will get that stuff to really be retained and get you to fully understand and learn the material. But all right, everybody. I appreciate all of you for coming in. Keith's dog closed out the show for us here.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I can't get it back, so I'm gonna have to probably shut down and restart. But yeah, thanks fine. Everybody for hanging out. Yes, we were late, but thanks for hanging out.
I think Keith's dog just said, "That's it. I need to stop talking. I need my dinner. Let's go." All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining. We'll see you guys on Monday unless anything crazy happens over the weekend. See you, everybody. Stay safe.